morning, boys and girls. It is time for Fundations and Reading. You are going to see the letter. It is your job to tell me the letter, the sound, and the key word. If you said, "Oh, octopus, ah," thumbs up. If you said, "Why yellow, ya," nice job. If you said, "A apple, ah," nice job. If you said, "T top, t," nice job. If you said, "I itch, I," thumbs up. If you said V van v, good. If you said E ed e, nice job. If you said Q U queen qua, nice. And if you said U up nice job. Okay, let's do our vowel extensions. A apple a apple e ed e ed I itch I itch O octopus O octopus you up you up Okay, words of the day that we worked on. Let's tap this one together. Fix, fix. And let's tap this one together. Quit, quit. Okay, and we have a sentence here with fix. I will fix the flat tire on my car. If you notice, we did 3 scoops. I will fix the flat tire on my car. And now a sentence with quit. She did not quit. She did not quit. Good. Okay, trick words. I'm going to click it. It's going to come out, and then you are going to yell it to me. Good job. The. Thumbs up. Of. His. Good. And. Is. Very good. All right. Nice job, friends. Now we're going to do, I told you for reading today, we were going to read a nonfiction book. And the nonfiction book that we're going to look at is called Thanksgiving. And normally in nonfiction books, you have a table of contents and it lists the different things that you're going to find. And if you wanted to look up information here, then you would turn to those pages. Thanksgiving. A family gathers around a table. They carve a large turkey, roasted golden brown. They pile their plates with gooey sweet potatoes, tart cranberry sauce, and creamy pumpkin pie. They may believe that they are keeping the tradition started on the first Thanksgiving. Yet, that first Thanksgiving was very different from the way Americans celebrate the holiday today. The Wampanoag. The story of the first Thanksgiving begins with a group called the Wampanoag, which means people of the dawn. 400 years ago, they lived in an area that is now Massachusetts and Rhode Island. They lived there for at least 10,000 years. The Wampanoag lived in weetus, which are round houses made of wood and bark. They hunted animals for food and skins. They fished in streams and in the ocean. They grew crops such as corn, beans, and squash. The sachem or leader of the Wampanoag was a man named Massasoit. He and another man named Tisquantum are part of the Thanksgiving story. Tisquantum was from a tribe called Patuxet. When he was young, he was kidnapped by an English ship captain and taken to Europe. There, he learned to speak English. When Tisquantum returned years later, he found that everyone in Patuxet village had died of illness. Later, Tisquantum lived in Massasoit's village. The settlers in December 1620, a small ship. We read all about this. About 100 passengers were on board. They had come from England so they could practice their religion freely. They built a settlement called Plymouth. Today, we call these English settlers, you're right, we call them Pilgrims. The Pilgrims built their colony on the Wampanoag land. They named it Plymouth after the Plymouth, England, where they had started their voyage from. When they arrived, it was bitterly cold. The Pilgrims suffered illness. They didn't have enough food. Half of the Pilgrims did not make it through the first winter. In the spring, Massasoit went to visit Plymouth with Tisquantum and the other Wampanoag men. The Pilgrims were surprised that Tisquantum spoke English. During this visit, Massasoit met the Pilgrim leaders, including William Bradford, Miles Standish, and Governor John Carver. Massasoit and the Pilgrim leaders signed a peace treaty. And a peace treaty is basically a document that says they're going to get along. They're not going to fight. Tisquantum stayed with the Pilgrims. He showed them how to grow crops that would survive in the new land. He taught them the best way to hunt, trap, and fish. The feast. In the fall of 1621, the Wampanoag heard gunshots. Massasoit took 90 Wampanoag to the Plymouth colony. They found that the Pilgrims were hunting fowl. The Pilgrims wanted the fowl for a celebration feast. The Pilgrims were celebrating their first successful harvest, which would give them enough food to make it through their second winter. It was successful in large part because the help that they received from the Wampanoag. Massasoit sent some Wampanoag men to hunt deer. They brought 5 deer to the feast. The harvest feast was not an organized meal like our Thanksgiving today. The Wampanoag came and went from the settlement throughout the feast. For 3 days, the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag ate, played games, and celebrated. Thanksgiving myths. The Thanksgiving story has been told countless times, yet many things we believe about the first Thanksgiving are not true. Myth. The name Pilgrims. The myth, the English settlers were called Pilgrims. In fact, in England, people were not allowed to belong to any church except for the Church of England. The settlers left England so that they could have their own church. They called themselves separatists, not pilgrims, because their church was separate from the Church of England. The name Thanksgiving. The myth is the settlers called their feast Thanksgiving. The fact is, the settlers did not call their feast Thanksgiving. For them, it was a harvest festival. For thousands of years, people all over the world, including Native Americans, have celebrated good harvest with feast and ceremonies. The settlers' feast in 1621 was a part of a long tradition. Myth. The clothing. Pilgrims dressed in grim black clothing. They wore silver buckles on their shoes and hats. The fact is, the actual Pilgrims didn't wear silver buckles. Silver was expensive and buckles weren't in style. They wore clothing dyed in such colors as red, green, blue, and violet. The Wampanoag wore deerskin, breechcloth, leggings, mantles, and moccasins. They often decorated their clothing with paint. Tradition. The myth, people in the United States celebrated Thanksgiving each year after that first Thanksgiving. The fact, the United States didn't have a national Thanksgiving holiday until almost 250 years later. Sarah Josepha Hale was a writer and a magazine editor in the 1800s. She grew up in New Hampshire, a place where people celebrated a Thanksgiving holiday. Sarah believed that the whole country should celebrate Thanksgiving. Sarah wrote editorials about Thanksgiving in her magazine. She wrote letters to 5 different presidents. Finally, in 1863, President Abraham Lincoln declared Thanksgiving a national holiday. Myth. On Thanksgiving, most people eat turkey, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, and pumpkin pie. We often think that this is the same meal that the Wampanoag and the Pilgrims ate. A myth means it's not actually totally true. The fact is, the real feast was much different. They ate venison, which is deer. From the deer, the Wampanoag people had brought them. They ate wild birds or wild fowl, but it could have been a turkey, duck, or goose. They could have eaten roasted pumpkin, but they didn't have butter, flour, or sugar to make a pie yet. They wouldn't have served cranberry sauce. Without sugar, cranberries are very sour. Finally, sweet potatoes came from South America. At the time of the feast, sweet potatoes hadn't yet been brought to North America. So some of the foods they ate were similar to foods we eat, but some of the foods were very different. The myth, or the thing that isn't quite totally true. We may think that today all people in the United States observe Thanksgiving in the same way. The fact is, many Wampanoag mark the holiday in a much different way. They gather on Thanksgiving Day at the statue of Massasoit in Plymouth, Massachusetts. They remember the strength of their Wampanoag ancestors. So some people celebrate the holiday in a different way. The Thanksgiving holiday people celebrate today is different from the first Thanksgiving in many ways. Even so, the holiday continues a long tradition of getting together with friends and family to celebrate and to be thankful. So some of those traditions that we have are similar to that first celebration that they had to celebrate their harvest, and some of the traditions are different. Some of the foods are the same, and some of the foods are different. I hope you enjoyed our nonfiction book today, and I hope you did a good job on your foundations.